Well, and the wholeness is part of it, right? Not just looking at the physical, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual as well. So looking at what the mindset is, the body's built in with resiliency and adaptability. And where's your belief system? How do you value yourself, right? Those things can trip us up out here and affect the physical. So beginning to bring back that resiliency is to understand the whole picture and what are the tools and who's the team that can provide the space for me to begin to build that back up.
Are you ready to live a heart-led, balanced life grounded in spirit and nature's wisdom? To step into your full power and potential? If so, you've come to the right place. I'm Olivia Ashley, a mother, intuitive, and holistic wellness advocate. Live Wildly is a community of people uplifting each other and shining our hearts to the world. Join us to remove limiting beliefs, enhance your intuition, reclaim your sovereignty, and uncover what makes you thrive. Together, we dive deep into holistic, earth-based, and spiritual topics while also exploring a variety of subjects to inspire and inform. Subscribe now and be a part of our journey towards living our most authentic, full lives. Welcome. I am so happy you are here. Hello, it's Olivia here. I hope that you are doing well, no matter what you're navigating, the challenges you're facing, what is coming up, that you can take this next hour or so to be here, be present, to listen, to just be here in the room with us as I talk with our guest today, who is Dr. Christie Edwards. And she has quite a long list of amazing accolades in the sense of she has a doctorate in natural medicine. She's a certified holistic health practitioner, a bioenergetic practitioner, a certified shape practitioner, and a Reiki master. And I feel just so much more. And so Dr. Christie believes that the human body has an innate ability to heal itself when the proper environment is created and supported. So she works with families and individuals that are seeking integrative ways to stay healthy, whether it's being proactive or to face health crisis or issues. And I have been working directly with Dr. Christie these last 4 months. She plopped into my lap at a beautiful time, which you'll hear in this episode more about my journey and what I'm going to her for. So I asked her to come on because I think she just has been so supportive. She has held space for me. She has shown up. She's answered so many questions that I have had and just let me kind of unravel. And it's been a long time since I've had a practitioner that's really provided me tools to give me understanding and be holistic in the ways that I'm looking for. So to really support all levels of my spirituality, my emotionality, my physicality, my mental state. And I really think I found someone who's just going to help me in this next phase of my life to maintain my health, to detox, to just feel like that next level of support when in reality, I really don't have a primary care doctor. I've never really had a primary care doctor once I became an adult. And yes, that might seem wild to you. I've had many midwives and practitioners or people to support, and I always advocate and get help when I need it. But I'm someone who has really honed in on what it takes for me and myself to feel well and good through my food, through nutrition, through sleep, through exercise, through herbal remedies, and just beyond. There's so many things that I do, and I love the biohacking, and I've layered it in, and yet I felt I was at a point that I just needed some extra support. So I went to Dr. Christie for a bioenergetic assessment, which gave me really good insight to what was going on. And then she helped me too with ion foot baths, with cupping, and really just her listening. She's been so welcoming and supportive. And in today's episode, we kind of build on that. And so we really talked about, right, what motivated her to get into this work, some of her life story. How does she define true health? What does she see as some of the causes of illness and decline? How do we find resiliency? What role does nature play? What about our gut health? And disconnection to our bodies. Also, the pandemic, we talked a bit about that, of just it changed so much. And we took it from that perspective of everyone was shifted. We were navigating, there was a lot that happened as a society. And so we took that and kind of just broke it down of what have we seen come out of that, and how do we support ourselves in kind of finding some semblance of a foundation and a balance and our health again, especially as we battle loneliness and just that fear that came with it. And then we moved into our children, right? How do we support the children? Sadly, they have the lowest life expectancy at this moment, lower than us, lower than our parents. And so obviously the toxic soup is not going well in this world, and things are just not going right. And so I asked her, just from her perspective, why is it? And what do we do to just help start with our children's resiliency? And then she talks more about what she does specifically, like her assessments. And I share about my experience with her and what she's helped me through. And really end of just, how do we reclaim sovereignty in ourselves? How do we reset and come back to this inherent power and be willing to advocate for ourselves, be willing to ask for other advice, ask for other input, go down other rabbit holes of what could maybe help me. Because I think sometimes it's not always cut and dry, right? It's not always black and white. There's a lot of gray in this area, and a lot of perspectives and feelings and science, and this is fact and that's not right. And we really have this conversation from a more alternative, a more just open perspective of we're working in these other modalities. We don't really touch about the Western medical system because that's not where we're existing in right now, and this wasn't where this conversation was going. So I hope that this brings something to light for you. Maybe you're someone who's been feeling good, but maybe something's a little off, or you're looking for more preventative care and can maybe have a spark of an idea based on this conversation. Or maybe you're really struggling, but you're not getting the answers that you want, or you're feeling kind of stuck, of just some ideas of where else you can turn, and finding that support systems and those communities that can listen and hold you and support you and take the time for you, because that's really what Christie has done for me. And I have been really grateful for it. So without much further ado, I'm going to kick you into the episode, and I hope you enjoy. Share it with anyone that you feel would benefit from it. And I just appreciate you being here, pressing play, being a part of my life, my community. I'm sending so much love to you, health and wellness, and just clarity on your journey. And I'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. Well, welcome, Dr. Christie, to Live Wildly. How are you doing today?
I am great.
Oh, yay. That's so wonderful. I am great too. So, why don't we start this conversation by having you share a little bit about yourself and your background so our listeners can get to know you?
Well, I've been a doctor of natural medicine for about 10 years now, and practicing for 10 years, doctor for the last 5. I have been married for 37 years. We've known each other for 40, so I was kind of pretty young when we met. And I have 2 fantastic daughters that are about your age. So my first life was a zookeeper, mother, part-time things through the years. Probably the most impactful job I've done was motherhood, and continue to do. But and now I've transitioned to animals through people, and now love working with people.
That's wonderful. I didn't know you were a zookeeper. That was my dream job going up, and then I never saw how I can make it happen. So that's amazing. What did you learn in that time? I must ask before we continue, just in that time and space. I know motherhood was front and center too, but
Oh, yeah, I really wanted to be a wild animal trainer. So that didn't totally come to fruition, but it did lead me down the path, and ended up in a small zoo in Las Vegas, actually, and learned a lot about the animals and how people interact with animals, how people can be afraid of them or disrespect them sometimes, but also have a huge reverence for them. Yeah, and there's some controversy right in there. Is it good to keep animals in a zoo so that we can learn about them versus just keeping them where they belong? So yeah, there's been a lot of life lessons throughout the years.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And yeah, I'm like, okay, I won't go into that topic because I'm such an animal
I,
lover and it's so fascinating to me. But I love how those threads, I think what I can see is maybe you didn't know where you were going, and yet it all is so purposeful of what you learned and what jobs and things you held that brought you to where you are. So bringing you to what you do today, what really motivated you to get into this work, to be a doctor of naturopathy, to help people heal, find understanding in their wellness and their bodies, and supporting people to find their optimal health and vitality?
yeah, I would have never dreamed when I was your age, actually, I would have never dreamed that this is where I was going to end up. I blame my parents. They were always very health conscious. And then when I did get pregnant with my first daughter, that then became very important, right? I switched the way I ate. I became more conscious and intentional about how I was taking care of myself. And that led to finding out of the box, unconventional people to take care of myself and my family. And then it really became more important with my younger daughter had asthma, and we moved to Germany for a few years. And when we first got there, she was 2.5. She had childhood asthma. So, and in that new climate, coming from Colorado to the moisture in Germany and the different latitude there, she every time she'd get sick, which was often, it would go straight to her lungs. And it's like, I've got to do something about this. I don't want to keep giving her steroids. So a friend that we had met went to a naturopath in Frankfurt, and she used a pendulum and asked it questions. She made homeopathics, and I never had to give Erica a steroid again. So that was really the time that drove it home that this is an important way to take care of ourselves. So when we came back to the States, I found a naturopath to help us with our health. And one day I was sitting with her and she was using one of the energetic devices that I use now, and was like, I think I could do this with people. I think this is what I need to do. So from that thought, it took several years, but it was an evolution of meeting different people to keep me on this path and bring me to where I am today. So
I love that. That's so beautiful. And I'm so curious with being in Germany and your daughter is sick. And so obviously you're just looking for anything that would help. How did you feel going into that appointment when she pulled out a pendulum and she's using homeopathics, and just what was that like for you? So you said you have a background, your family was pretty holistic and everything. So was that out of norm for you, or you just kind of were open and it worked?
open, a little out of norm, but open to it. And she also didn't speak any English. So there was challenges on different levels. And it was just fascinating. I hadn't experienced some different energy stuff, but mostly through kinesiology or, an more unconventional chiropractor at the time anyway. But yeah, so it was very fascinating. And instead of being afraid of it, it just sucks me in. So
Yes, isn't that interesting? I think we need to pull those threads and we need to really trust when something's just sparking your curiosity and maybe you don't know why, but follow it. Trust that. So I love that you were able to do that, and then it evolutionized in a way. It changed as you came back to the States, and then it brought you to what now you've been doing for so long and really fuels you. So with that, I want to start to bring us into health and wellness and really utilize your skills and your learning of everything that you've seen these last 10 years plus. And to start, I am curious how you would define like true health. What does that mean in someone's body? And I think maybe everyone can feel a little differently about that, but what do you see as also like what true health is, but then the keys to achieving that health and wellness? What do we need to know?
I think you want to feel a sense of wholeness and balance, right? You want to be able to wake up and have energy and have that energy sustain you throughout the day. If a situation arises that's stressful or kind of throws you off, you want to be able to like react to it in a manner that's not going to knock you down, right? Or set you back. where you might get upset for a little bit, but be able to bounce back right away. You know, you're sleeping well, your functions are all functioning appropriately. You're able to laugh and enjoy the moments. And it's not just physically, but mentally as well.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to come to this because I see this as like resiliency. I would say true health, that resiliency. And that's exactly what you just described. And I love that you brought laughter because isn't that a piece that I think we don't often associate with our health? We're so serious sometimes. We're serious, like how many
Yeah.
calories are we consuming? What do we look like? How do we, and maybe there's a sense of how do we feel if you're lucky enough to be thinking in that holistic minded way. But what do you see from your perspective as being some of the main causes of illness and decline in our overall health these days? I mean, I think too, like our kids and us now learning that our children have a lower expectancy than we did. I mean, that's like we're not going down the right path, it seems. So, where, from your standpoint, would you say like some of those faults are? And this is a huge conversation, so I know that that's a big question, but just to kind of land us in this sense, yeah, where would you start?
Well, I think the standard American diet it's really gone downhill for the last 60, almost starting 100 years, but definitely since World War II, things have really declined over the generations, more toxic burden in all kinds of different ways. But so I think each generation, the gut health of our children are just getting a little bit weaker with every generation. So they're not as resilient to be able to tolerate the exponential growth of all the toxicity that we're surrounded with. You know, and I think that's one reason why you probably see so many more allergies, more autism, more ADD and ADHD, and just obesity in children. You know, there's all kinds of ways the kids are affected. So I think generationally they've become weaker. And then there's just the toxic burden from, chemicals and heavy metals and germs, superbugs, to the EMFs, the electromagnetic frequencies that come from cell phones and computers and Wi-Fi and all of these signals that are around us all the time. And all of them, and even maybe the increased vaccinations. And none of it's a specific cause per se, but we don't know which one or the combination of items that are going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So if the constitution is weaker, and then you're putting all this burden on the body, something's going to cause it to break.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that point because I think there's so quick to point fingers and say, this is the main issue, that's the main issue. And really, I think it's the toxic soup of it all. It's all of these things, the compounding, like you said, and the exponential growth it's a never ending onslaught for our bodies to navigate and deal with. And it's so much with technology, so new. Everything the last 150 years is so new. And so we've had to very quickly adapt as humans. And obviously, we must be doing a somewhat good job. But at the same time, there is this, I feel like the canary in the coal mine has been chirping for a while. And in that, pick your poison, right? And I think for every kid, for every person, their body, like you said, that constitution is so different that it's going to affect them in a different way. But I remember being a child and I was reflecting on this the other day of as soon as I could really read and look around our pollution problem, like the way we deal with our trash, our septic systems, the vaccines, the chemicals we spray on our food, on our lawn, we destroy all the natural habitats, right? Pick a dart and just throw it somewhere and you're going to find something that doesn't quite have it right. And so I think with that, because we're not going to solve for that here, that's not our goal. But so how do we begin to find that resiliency? So, and I come from the standpoint of thankfully, I am someone who had a lot of health issues, have kind of turned the corner, and have been mostly feeling good in my body with some fluctuations and things. And yet I am still noticing like this is hard. I am doing as much preparation and preventative care as I can. And yet I know many don't. So, but like, where do we begin? Even myself, who's very minded health wise and holistic as best I can, how do we start to set that foundation? What have you learned in your studies and practices that maybe most people haven't thought of to do? I think we can think of like food and sleep, right? Filter our water, some of those basics, but we're obviously still missing. And I think you're someone who has done so much learning and has so much education and experience that has brought that wholeness to your life and those of your clients. So I'd love for you to share more about that.
Well, and the wholeness is part of it, right? Not just looking at the physical, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual as well. So looking at what the mindset is, right? The body's built in with resiliency and adaptability. And where's your belief system? How do you value yourself, right? Those things can trip us up out here and affect the physical. So beginning to bring back that resiliency is to understand the whole picture and what are the tools and who's the team that can provide the space for me to begin to build that back up. I think we really have to get back to mindfulness practices to get us centered and reconnect with Mother Earth and kind of the universe, source, whatever that may be for you, and bring it all together, and then continue or bring in, of course, food is medicine, right? And giving your body what it needs, and what's you do going to be different from what I need, and what you need right now could be different in 3 months.
That's so true. It's constantly changing and shifting, but finding like somewhere just to start. I think that's your gut sense, and your body is always giving you little nuggets of information. Like, this doesn't feel right, or something's not quite there. And like, if you're listening, or even if you don't even have that practice, I think, right, if you're in pain or something's not right, you know where your baseline is. It's like, start to investigate. And then I always did I'm looking for that next thing or that person or that thing, like, lead me to it, show me a book, right? Trusting that someone will come into my way the way you did. And you've been so helpful for me these past few months of moving through some of the things I have been, but it was such a trust thing, and just starting with one or two things. Like, don't feel you have to go, I have to completely revamp my life. I mean, yes, if you're at that point of looking at your life and going, I can't exist in this way, then yes, something larger probably needs to shift. But I like that of, what do you need now, and find those resources to help you start to navigate. And I think also being willing to look alternatively, which is the point of this whole conversation somewhat of, while you are trained in this holistic mindset and have this doctorate and this backing, I think it's so vastly different from what I think of my brother who's moving through the Western medicine system to become a doctor. Very different. And so also understanding that, what are you looking for, right? What lens are you looking for? What type of help are you really wanting? And if you don't get it from who you tried, go somewhere else. Be willing to advocate for yourself, because that's what I've learned over my years is no one has your back but you, in a way. And I hate to like set that thinking. And yet I think it's such a strong, like, I come from it from like a strength point of, only you can really know what you need. And so don't just accept what people say, even what we say here, right? Like, be willing to investigate. So I'm curious, on this thread of talking more holistically, like really looking energetically, how does energy and quantum science fit into the equation of health? Because I know a lot of what you do has integrated and has these aspects rooted in what you do. And I find it so supportive. So I would love for you to share and expand on that.
So yeah, for me, when I came across quantum physics, and it really excited me because it gives the scientific foundation for all these things we've thought were woo-woo for all these years, right? So it's still a pretty hard science to comprehend, but it is science, and it does give it all a foundation. And so the foundation of, we are all energy. We are made up of an energetic body along with the physical body. And so we can tap into the different energies to help us heal, to grow, to manifest, to do all of these things. And it's given even biology a new context and has kind of even questioned the Darwinian theory. So for me, the first time I read something in this realm, it brought all of my thoughts, because I was, my first degree is zoology, is I was a science major, kind of always believed in God, but never really, and had this thing in my mind about how the two work together and that they did belong together. And so when I started learning all of this stuff, it all came together. It made perfect sense in my mind. So now I can hopefully use that to help people on their own journeys of looking at things in a different perspective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I am the same way of it's so like intangible, the quantum science. And yet when it's described to me, I always go, yes, okay, that makes sense. At that atomic level, I think it's so fascinating what it does. And once you start to really look into that realm and see yourself as this energetic body almost first, and then it's like this meat suit is layered in that kind of is an expression of this energy in its form. And so I'm also really curious. Like I'm right on your track with the Darwinian theory being kind of shot down. And it makes so much sense when you look into that and the reasonings behind it. Like, why did we stop there? I think there's this sense of limitedness in the way of our current systems of thinking. And quantum science and like quantum physics and all of that is really breaking down a lot of these long held beliefs. And back to even science right now feels like it's fact, when in reality, science was always here to be theory, to theorize, to do experiments, to say, yeah, to question. And so I think what I've seen and what your work has really helped me do is start to feel okay in those questionings, but also good. Like I start to feel good. The reasonings and the tools that you're using feel so supportive. And I know you also are very intuitively minded. So you're gifted and you can sense things that not always everyone can. I think we all have a sixth sense of that intuition. And so, what role do you see intuition and connection to ourself playing in our health? I think you touched a little bit around energy, but if we can take it a step further to really that internal insight, that sixth sense, how can we use it to help us in our health journey?
So yeah, I think we do all have that, right? It's innate within us. It's part of who we are as spiritual beings having a human experience, right? So your body's talking to you all the time. Even an allergy is a symptom, but it's the way your body's communicating with you that, hey, something's going on here that's causing this reaction. So the more you can become in tune with yourself, then and open yourself up to those messages, and trusting, right? It's all trust and faith that there is a greater picture than just me. And so using that, tapping into that intuition, into that communication and into the field, so to speak, you can find that guidance. And if you do it from a place of trust, faith, gratitude, and love, then things will just open up for you. It will become clearer. If you're working from a space of fear and mistrust, then it's harder to see, right? You're not going to get that clarity of that communication.
Yes, and I want to flip it back in a way, still on this topic. I think from us in our bodies looking for health, yes, trust in yourself, listen to those messages. But I want to ask you as a practitioner, because I think there's another layer of how intuition can be supported in that sense. How has that helped you? And or I'm thinking of like others who are out there who are practitioners who are maybe in this field, but maybe not directly helping like health or healing, but could maybe benefit from utilizing their intuition and integrating it into their practice. Have you done that, or what does that look like for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, it's all added information, right? It's becoming connected with the client and receiving information about where their struggles might be physically or emotionally. And it creates more empathy. And and then providing that safe space for them to actually be able to open up and allow for the healing.
Yes. And I'm just curious, what practices have you used to help yourself enhance your intuition or gain clarity? We're going to go into, some of the things you do, but I'm curious from a personal standpoint, what has really helped you attune that intuition and support you on that journey?
Mindfulness practices, taking energy, taking classes from other intuitives, working with other energy workers on myself. And honestly, it's still a work in progress, right? There's still lots of opening that can take place as well. So
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And so, as I start to dive in a little bit more specifically, I want to talk about the power of nature, which you touched on a little bit in your opening with your daughter, the herbs, the elements, even. What role are these things playing in our well being? And I ask that because when I look back like 10 years ago, I understood food, right? Like, and this is separate from food, I would say, like nature, as in being in nature, grounding, herbs, as in tinctures and herbal medicines, elements, as like that connection to fire, to water, to all those things that I know we have. Like, none of that was even in my sphere. Even to a couple years ago, I did not understand. And then it's been like this massive awakening in a way of, wow, we are so connected. And I feel like you've known that for a long time. So, what do you see that role is of these things, and how do we begin to cultivate that relationship again and start to integrate some of these things into our lives?
yeah, I think within the energy sphere, right, it all comes down to the life force and vibrational frequencies. So when you're talking about herbs and they're growing in their local environments, and some are, they're grown at a certain elevation in certain areas of the world, and that they have the most qualities that are beneficial for our health in those areas. And so I think it comes down to those energetic life force. So if it's grown in that area, right, and you're getting it from there, you're going to get the most benefit from it, and higher quality nutrients in there or their properties, but also it's the vibrational frequency, right? They're going to have the highest vibrational frequency, and the higher, the most life force that we can put back into ourselves is going to elevate us and our health. And if we're talking about animals, for people that eat meat, right? Commercially raised versus grass-fed beef, we want to eat happy animals if you're going to eat an animal. And so looking at how things are raised, how they're grown, and if we've destroyed the natural order of how things are grown or raised, that is lowering those frequencies and changing the way even the planet is working, right? We've destroyed the soil to grow things with the right amount of nutrients that we need from food.
That's great. And I'm curious, maybe we could touch on the gut a little bit, because I think that really is the like the bane of our existence in a way, of what's causing so many other issues, because we've depleted that soil. The animals that we're eating, the food we're eating is just toxic laden, unhappy, vibrationally unsound, and or void in a way. What could we do to help start to shift that? So maybe it's just like you said, starting to shift and look at what you're eating and where it's from and what's the best quality. But is there any other things that we should be aware of? How do we help our gut?
Yeah, well, sometimes depending on where the gut is, I mean, you might need some extra help from different supplements, but looking from an environmental standpoint and getting back to in touch with the earth and the environment is going local, actually paying attention to those things and doing the best that you can. But gut health, depending on where you are, which is why we use the assessments that we do, right, to figure out where the health of the gut might be, and adding in, specific nutrients like digestive enzymes or even probiotics are two very general things. And then there's many other things we can do too to build up that resistance.
Yeah. I think, and I just asked because I think it's just one of the most foundational pieces that if you don't start anywhere else, I think starting with your gut is a really good place to begin, and having that connection back to that nature and your herbs and your food is really where it starts. And then, yes, adding probiotics, getting supplementation, getting an assessment too. But I feel like it's talked about so much, and yet it's so ungrounded in a way. I just remember going to my doctor when I was a kid and then being like, just eat fiber and your gut will be fine. And so I think that's where I'm like, that is the most silly answer. Like you're right in some sense, but like also so vastly far off. So I think that's where I wanted to ask, because I think that's what I see a lot of people
Yeah.
having
And
issues with.
I talk a lot about cellular communication. So, and that really begins in the gut. So if the gut's compromised, then pretty much the whole system, right? It shuts down the immune system, the cellular communication, right? We have a community in there. So looking at the microbiome, playing in the dirt, go back to gardening, let your kids play in the dirt because you're picking up microbes, which are good. And especially in our local area, to do things like that to enhance your
Mm,
health too. Stop using sanitize Clorox wipes or hand sanitizers that kill everything.
hmm.
If you're
Yes.
doing it all the time, once in a while, it's fine. But if you're sanitizing all of your area all the time, you're killing every good thing as well as a bad thing. And then you don't have any, we need the good bacteria too, right? It's our natural defenses.
Hmm. Yes, that's so important. You're definitely right. And yeah, back to what we were when we were kids, and or even way before, like go play, be outside, be in nature. I love Zach Bush of Ion Biome. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he has this whole thing, breathe your biome, like this request to go be local, but go into different areas because the microbiome in each of these areas is different, and what you're getting is different. But so many of us just go from our house to our car, maybe to the mailbox, to our work, and then back home. And so what we're experiencing is so limited. And to your point, if it's all sanitized, there's nothing left, and then we have no defenses.
Well, and even having conversations with people, you're sharing you're sharing some microbiome, right?
True.
So by never going out and meeting with people and doing different things that the last few years have led to, you're kind of missing out on that too. So
I think this is a perfect segue as my next questions around disconnection from our bodies. I think both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I think the majority of us are struggling, whether we know it or not. We've just gone out through the back of our heads, our soul, and we're just kind of existing, or we aren't taught these levels of communication and this sense of self and understanding. And so, how, from your perspective, can we start to cultivate a relationship with ourselves again? I would say from the standpoint of someone who is pretty mainstream, like just goes about their days, has not really been taught too much outside of what the mainstream is sharing, and is not feeling great. So I think mindfulness practice is probably one of your recommendations. But yeah, how do we just start to recultivate that spark and that vitality? And I think, and I ask this because I lived most of my life in a standpoint of always feeling so bad and thinking that was normal. Like, this is just normal. Everyone must feel this way. And when I started to feel good, it was like the clouds disappeared and I went, what? This is the truth of how I could feel. And I'm sure there's another level of that. And so I want to ask this in the sense of, we might feel like we're stagnant or stuck where we are, or like this is your norm and you're stuck with it forever. But I really challenge that and think there's a lot of things that we can start to do. So, where would you start?
starting with something simple, even acupuncture or breathing, going to a yoga class that specializes just in breathing, something that's going to connect you back to the earth, right? Or reach out and find a holistic health practitioner that does some assessments, maybe looks, to see what's going on, maybe out of balance, and make one change, or stepping outside of your comfort zone, go learn something new, even listening to a new podcast that's totally outside of your normal realm of what you like to listen to.
Yeah, those are all really good tips. So, just finding something to shift and change. And I think That is probably at its baseline simplicity that, yeah, it's one little change of your life can start to affect so much. And so looking at the things you usually do, and if you're not really liking yourself or feeling good within yourself, starting to say, okay, how do I have a new routine? How do I change the things I do? Just in the sense of all of that will bring something different to you. And I think we can often get stuck in our stagnant patterns.
And even if you share, if you're a person that has a hard time sharing, even with a friend or something, right? Just, to just share something with somebody, because they might all of a sudden, they might say, oh, man, I was just talking to somebody else and they went to this person, right? So if you can share a little bit, you never know what other people's life experiences has brought them. And then they might know somebody, right?
Mhm.
Or what somebody that's, oh man, this person was feeling the same way and they tried this. And oftentimes you have the same symptoms, trying the same thing doesn't always do the same thing for each person, but at least it's something new to try and to open up your mind to maybe there are alternatives and I don't have to stay this way if you're not feeling well.
Yes, yes. Lean on others, talk about it, share about it. I think community is such a important aspect. If you don't feel like you have that, how do you find just at least one person to help anchor you and or get you in a way that it just helps? I think that's really loneliness is such a sad, I think, hard piece that many of us are struggling with technology and all those things. And it brings me to my next question around I think the pandemic just shifted us all in this massive way. And I think loneliness was probably at the key. It was really highlighting some of those cracks in our system and these faults. But what have you seen from your work and like maybe even energetically? How did the pandemic affect many of us and our health and well-being? What were some of those ramifications that you saw within your clients or just broader speaking that really affected our health and wellness? Right outside of like the very specific glaring thing, if you got sick, right, that affected you. But I mean more of culturally or societally, energetically, how did the pandemic really shift a lot of us?
Yeah. I think the isolation really played a toll on people. I hope that, they put all those rules in place to protect us and thinking that the risk was greater than the alternative. But I think that isolation really hurt a lot of people from a lot of different perspectives. And just in a podcast I listened to a few weeks ago, it was a woman that she helps caretakers of Alzheimer's and dementia families, people that take care of them. And so those people, even though the parents might have been with, the daughter's living with their parents and she's their caretaker, those people were isolated even in their home. And the caretaker's all of a sudden doing this 24 hours a day and has nobody then to support her. Right. So it was very eye-opening. I think it affected us. I mean, we can say that generally, right? That the isolation hurt a lot of people, suicide rates are up and all of this, but there's so many people that you just take for granted of how it may have impacted their life. And then of course, not being with loved ones, not going outside in the fresh air. But also physically, I've seen a lot of heart issues, especially blood pressure, a lot of random things coming up for people that didn't have before. Increasing in autoimmune conditions, cancers seem to be growing faster.
Mhm. And I'm like, I'm not going to open this can of worms of like, what do you think is causing that? But I would say, how can we begin to help ourselves heal? I think a lot of us still feel like, is that going to happen again? Are we still on the cusp of it? Is that forced isolation going to occur? And how would we manage? I don't think so. I think enough of us would be like, that did not go well. We can't manage that again. But from you being so intuitively minded and energetically centered, so you've said like the heart, so maybe focusing on some heart energy work and or what would be some tips around what you saw and like the isolation? How can we help support ourselves through that?
right? And for people to realize that, you know, it was a trauma, right? So what can you do to help yourself move through that trauma? So maybe it is finding, a therapist or energy workers to help release that trauma from that time. And that feeling of being disconnected has stuck with a lot of people, right? So there is that disconnection between, well, again, heaven and earth, so to speak. So, looking for somebody that can help you through that. You don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Again, I like back to what you've said before, just start with one thing and even just that awareness of, how did this really change me? Or what am I still holding on to? I think I know this sounds crazy, but sometimes I forget we had a pandemic, which is ridiculous. But the way that I lived my life, I just flowed through it and was like, okay, I'm still going to try and maintain some sense of normalcy and move forward and resiliency. And someone made that comment, and I went, oh, yeah. That just happened. That was a lot. Like, oh, I kind of blocked all that out, I think, even too. And so maybe it's a prompt to spend some time unraveling, sitting with yourself and going, how did that really settle into my body system? And what are those lingering effects that I'm still having? And then help and find those modalities or those people to start to help you untangle and release some of that to a place where you feel good. Because I think a whole part of life is just untangling the trauma and the energy that gets stuck in our systems. And the pandemic certainly did that for the majority of us.
It did. And it did it through fear, right? Which is one of our worst emotions that causes a lot of blockages. So there was a lot of fear surrounding anything to do. And there still is. People are still afraid of getting sick.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh gosh, that's a whole nother topic too, of just that our relationship with sickness, of how we see people who are sick, gaining sickness. I mean, do you have anything you want to add around that, of just how can we retain resiliency when I feel like the world is at this new phase of, again, fear, right? How do we grasp our sovereignty? How do we grasp back that power in ourselves that, like, we are okay? We might get sick. We probably will get sick. So, do we have the preventative pieces in play? Do we have those resources? What do you do with that? What would you say around this topic?
I'd say we definitely have the resources, right? It's all about the immune system. And we have the resources to build up the physical foundation of how the body functions through a ton of modalities, right? From everything I do, chiropractic, acupuncture, all the energy workers, and even Western medicine, right? If you integrate Western and all these traditional and new therapies, you can build up the immune system and being able to fight these things off with more ease.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because I too am at the same standpoint of, I think integration is where I would love to see our medical systems go. I think it's
Absolutely.
too polarizing to do one or the other. Both have so much knowledge and groundedness in themselves, but I think they can be a little misguided here and there. And so I love saying that integration of, again, not that fear of one side or the other, one's better than the other. I think they all have their pros and cons and what they're good for. So illuminating for yourself, what is your wholeness, right? Like, how do you create that wholeness and that immunity for yourself? Because I love that you said we are all so capable of that. Our bodies are built to have this. We need to remember that and fuel it and provide what it needs to help support that. And so, learning and being willing to learn. And kind of brings me to some of our next questions around some alternative health treatments, knowing that, yes, we're all for integration, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into the alternative side. So you offer variety such as cupping, Reiki, chakra balancing, bioenergetics, ion foot baths, all of which I just can stand behind and say so supportive, so needed, and it has been such a gift for me to find. But I'm curious, so what drew you to these methodologies to support health? And I know we talked about this a little bit, but what have you seen, maybe is more the question around what have you seen in using these types of health outside, right? So you're not a part of the Western medical system. You get to operate completely different and support others through these quote unquote alternative healing methods. But what are some of those benefits and what drew you to those?
So I love practicing bioenergetic medicine, and a few of the tools that I use to assess what's going on in the body, right, they're all energy based. So we get immediate feedback is number one. Your body will give me feedback through these assessments immediately and say, here's why I'm out of balance. Got inflammation going on, or I've got suppression going on. Things are acute or chronic. Even the hair scan that shows the deficiencies and everything, right? Here's possible deficiencies with foods to support them. And this is all done through the energetics. So the feedback is immediate. So we can start something right away. We don't have to wait for test results to come back. Also great information in all the different kinds of testing out there. But I love the immediate feedback. We can get working on a protocol or modifications right away. And then adding in some of the adjunct therapies, like the foot baths. I'm kind of like an ion foot bath guru. People love them. They feel great results. And it's a form of ionization that helps the body release toxicity. It just assists the body in releasing those toxins, and helps with joint pain and sleep and all kinds of different things, relaxation. And the cupping helps move the energy along the meridians, as well as stagnation in the muscles or added tension from the muscles, increasing circulation. The Reiki and the chakra balancing also helps balance the chakras, lets you release things on a different level, on that emotional level, instead of something physical, right? Or talk therapy or something. So, and also that can help on so many different ways. It can be really deep or very subtle. For everybody's different. So it's just fascinating to see. And the client, you are the healer. Your body is healing itself. You are tapping into it and allowing it with the right information. So I just get to interpret that information or channel the energy to the person. So I'm just the mediator and you are the healer. So my job is to support and empower and inform my clients so that they can live their greatest potential.
I love it. And I will speak a couple minutes on just my experience with these to really ground too from the other side. You as a practitioner getting to do it and really seeing the benefits. But for me, I found you, and specifically because I don't really know what was happening. I think it was hormonal as my body was navigating coming back into postpartum periods and having my cycle again, but it was not doing well. Whatever it was doing was having a very hard time. And I also just intuitively, I just kept feeling like the last 5+ years, like something's up with my liver, trying to support it, but not really understanding. And I'd say that connection to the gut. So, like, gut and liver was my thinking, and then my heart, like, but that was more energetic, like sadness moving through miscarriage, my dad's death, lots of just heaviness was weighing on me. And as the universe does, my husband gave me Dr. Christie's card and I sat on it for a while. But then I was in this moment of complete meltdown in a meeting, on the verge of crying and just leaving, and texting an intuitive friend going, am I okay? I don't think I'm dying, but something's not right. And so I immediately called Christy. I got in, I did the bioenergetics, which, to your point, like what you said, it's immediate, it's fascinating. It's a Tesla coil, is what you said. And everything, when you were coming back, like the majority of my body was okay. And yet was my liver, my gut, and my heart, and all in different ways. And I just went, this is wild, because that's what I was sensing, but I don't know. And I can't affect your biofeedback machine. And so you helped me so much in getting some ideas of what could I start to tweak, or yes, yeah, this is correct. So like adding some digestive enzymes. I added a couple different supplements that were very specific, some homeopathic tincture for my heart. And I feel so much better. I felt like, okay, I'm getting support, just a few minor tweaks. And I want to say that it was not like I changed my whole diet. I removed a couple things that the bioenergetics said weren't supportive, added in things that it said would be. And then I had never done cupping. I had never done the ion foot bath. But me, I was like, of course, I'm going to be here for it. You recommended it. And I feel so much better. I think this is going to become, at least for a couple months, like a monthly routine of mine to get cupping and to get the ion foot bath, because especially the foot bath is just bananas for me. I feel lighter, I feel more clear, and to watch the gunk that comes out of your body, that
Mhm.
what's in there, I think a lot of people discount and go, no, you just put stuff in there and made it happen. No, you guys, what comes out is ridiculous. And just knowing though too that that's in your body at all times made me really sad, but also amazed that our bodies can withstand that level of gunk and toxins and stuff in our system. That's been my experience. And I wanted to share that just as someone who I'm doing this. I'm currently working towards finding better health in my body. And I have found a lot of support through these systems. Is there anything you want to add around that?
Thank you. I love that. That
Yes,
feels so good.
it does. Well, and it does feel so good. And so I've told many friends planting seeds, hey, that you should look into this, whether you come to you or a lot of my friends are in other states, but just knowing that there are so many other modalities that can support your overall health. And so it brings me to my next question of why do you think science and people are so afraid of these other methods that truly seem to be helping people? And often they're so grounded in ancient methodologies or systems of healing. And I'm just curious from your standpoint, right? Like I think we can all have a different answer to this, and there's many different layers historically that we could unravel. But I am all for the integration of it. And it just upsets me when there's such anger and fear around the willingness to attempt to feel better. Like if we're doing our best to help ourselves, why do you feel from your standpoint, why is this happening?
I don't know if Western medicine fears it so much as, well, doesn't want it. And for whatever reason, and it's created a fear amongst general population. But I don't know when the health insurance industry, how they set their standards and what they would cover and what they don't. But that's also created a lot of fear or skepticism around things that aren't covered by insurance, which is sad. And I hope someday that that the system will change, because I think that's what's broken, right? Even for doctors. I'm sure doctors all came into their profession because they want to help people feel good and live a healthy life. And then the health insurance industry puts standards on them that they can't do it appropriately. So the advantage you get with a holistic person, somebody in the alternative world, is you get time and you get a safe space to actually be vulnerable and allow what needs to come out so that that person can best help you achieve your health goals. But
No, I like what you said though, because it brought a few different things. One, I didn't really think about the insurance, how they're a part of this bigger system and really restrictive in what we can and can't do. My husband and I knew we'd always want either home births or birth center births. And so we've paid out of the wahoo for like the most expensive insurance to allow and make sure we could have access to that, still had to pay for it. But there's so much, you're right, that just isn't covered. And then people can't afford it or feel like, okay, that's must not be real science or health minded medicine if you're not going to cover it. And then I also I think it creates this competition almost within doctors that in the pharmaceutical industry to not be willing to almost like share in a way like different what's helping your patient, what's helping that outside of just what is insurance deem worthy and what is the pharmaceutical system deem worthy. I think those are the two motivators. Yeah, go ahead.
and they don't have time. Like a doctor doesn't have time to dive into the new research, right? Medical schools, I've heard, are 20 years behind in their research by the time, makes it into their curriculum. it's already outdated, but that's what they're learning. And then I think what else they're learning is from the pharmaceutical industry, right? The medical reps are teaching them about their product, and this is when you need to use it, and that's their solution, right? That's what they're taught is their solution to whatever problem is going on. And then it's all compartmentalized, whether that came first or the insurance came first or however they do that, right? You have a heart problem, you go to the heart doctor. You have a liver problem, you go to the liver doctor. And then they don't talk.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I have had that when I went through my miscarriage. And I just had a friend unfortunately go through one, and we were having the same conversation of it has been horrendous. One, when I went through it, but two, to watch her go through this and the specialists, and no, you go to your primary care doctor and maybe there's something else, but are you actively in harm's way? Otherwise, you're going to go on this very long list to see this next person, but then you'll still have to go back over here to get results. And then you'll go over there to get the surgery or whatever. And like all the effects and ramifications when you're at the most vulnerable of times, and
Yeah.
people just don't care. I mean, I don't even want to open this can of worms too, but I think you hit the nail on the head of then it just infuses this vulnerability for ourselves of maybe I don't even want to go to the doctor. Maybe I don't even want to get help. I also see that in a lot of people of this is my norm and I'm just going to accept it, or I'm too scared to go to the doctors because of the experience that people have had. And I think you're right. Like the holistic community is very loving and opening and truly wants to help you, at least the majority of what I've seen. And I've also seen this network that grows between different folks, even like us having this conversation. I mean, just us both wanting to help, and we're in different spheres and fields. And yet we're like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's bring other people in. And so that willingness, and you don't have boundaries the way the insurance system and the medical system forces upon you. And I get why they do. I get why there's policies and there's procedures. I understand. And yet there creates this overall struggle and strife and suffering for a lot of the people who have to move through that system and only have that system. And so I don't know if and when there'll ever be integration. Praise be, hopefully so. But everything that you shared, that was a really helpful, made me think about a lot of different ways and the things that I have witnessed and gone through. And just there's always other options, I think, for anyone listening. And even if you're unsure where you stand, there's always other voices, always other people who could help support you. Don't be afraid to keep looking.
Right. Always keep looking and
Yeah.
sharing, and
Yes.
there's a lot out there. I was really hoping that that the pandemic would say, oh, let's look at what else might be working. What else can we try with people to see if it has an effect, right? Even bring in acupuncture in, or ozone therapy, or, things that are outside of Western medicine box, just to say, let's see if this works because we're in a crisis, and it didn't happen.
Yes. I think there was so much conversation
It
around,
actually was the opposite.
yes, of instead of putting all this funding behind like health, like let's advocate for strong immune systems, time outdoors, better practices to teach us what health really is. It was the exact opposite of that. And that made me really sad. And I think I showed all of us who are aware of kind of what's going on that their interests are kind of misguided and something else is at play, because that was a perfect opportunity to shift into a lot of integrated, supportive, holistic aspects of how do we teach resiliency to our children and bring resources to help from a young age on. You're right. It was really sad to see that it went a different way.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, to that, I love this. This conversation has been so good. How do we help our children with our well being, right? I think everything we've talked about, we can integrate it and distill it for our kids. But yeah, I also see them as it's just like a different subsect of people and beings to help support. So, and I'm also curious because you obviously have had challenges with your own children and their health, and you navigated that so well. So, how do we help our kids hearing that their now life expectancy is less than ours? Their toxic onslaught is higher probably than ours was when we were kids. where do we begin to set the resiliency, knowing we need to do this at a young age?
Right. And it's such a huge topic, but I think really the easiest thing people can do is really look at their food, right? How much sugar are you feeding your kids? Even if you don't want to look at quality, just look at what it is. Are you giving them some vegetables and some protein, some decent fats, right? How much sugar is in their diet in the form of white sugar versus maybe something sweetened with honey? What are those small changes that you could make just within their diet and in daily life? Are you going outside and playing? Are they in front of the monitors and the EMFs all day long? Little, just general things like that. Then, of course, we can dive deeper
Mm-hmm.
if necessary and look at homeopathics are incredible for kids to help support them. Kids are having anxiety younger and younger today too. So tools like even the brain tap can be fantastic. Finding a yoga studio that does yoga with kids. And I love that a lot of schools are bringing in some of that into the elementary schools now. So I think that's just amazing. So keep it simple. Just make little changes every few months, every 6 months, make a change, do something different to incorporate looking at your laundry detergent or what kind of hand soap are you using, right? And make those small shifts over time, because if you try to do it all at once, it's too overwhelming and then nothing will happen.
Yes, those are all really good ways. I almost think take the mind frame of what toxins am I sharing? And maybe even understanding what is a toxin, right? I think none of us learned that. We came from the assumption of what's in the grocery store is safe or what's being sold, it must be safe. And I think really starting to reevaluate even there of what is that truth. And yeah, to your food and that outdoor time and just playtime with you, even having some of that helps. But I think the toxicity is really, like you said, probably the biggest thing. Detergents, scents, yeah, like hand sanitizers, soaps, all that, those really can contribute. And I'm curious, could you talk a little bit more about homeopathy and how that can really support kids? Because this is actually like, I want to go Google this. I don't know much about homeopathy, but it keeps coming up in my mind and my sphere. So expand on that a little bit for those of us who really don't know much, and or how could we use this with our kids?
Yeah. So there's traditional homeopathics, and they have a whole pretty specific system of how they do things. So that's not me. I am not a homeopathic therapist, but I do use homeopathic tinctures that are formulas taken from homeopathic principles, and they work on the energetic body. So there's actually, it's one of those quantum concepts, right? It's diluted. They take an actual source and it's so diluted, and it's diluted into different quantities. And that the more diluted it is, the stronger it actually is. So then we're back to the energy, to the life force of the original product or products that are in the tincture. So when you're actually taking it, the product is completely distilled out. So it's just the life force, the vibration, the energy that's left in the tincture. And that's what's working with the energetic body. So basically you can think about it like sending signals, right? You're taking it in and it's signaling the body about the properties of the tincture. And then the body takes those signals and it knows what to do with them. And so then it does its thing to help in that, what it's helping with the healing.
That was super helpful. Thank you. I know there's so much more there, but that gave me an
Yeah.
understanding. And I think it hurts my mind to grasp. It's so different from what you're like taught in a way of how it's distilled. And you're like, how can that work? But once you understand energetics, the power that's inherent in it is so amazing. So this is my next rabbit hole I'm going to start to dive into. I'm so curious about it. And before we wrap up with the wild heart questions to close this out, are there any teachings, research, or health improvement devices that you're fascinated right now, or you think you might be like on to something that you want to share?
Oh, there's so many out there. I could just go crazy, but no, right now I'm really drawn to the energy work and keep continuing to learn more about the energy and how, without a device, how I can use my hands, to give the energy to the person, that their body will then take that energy and heal with it. It feels like that's where we need to go into the future, because we're so blocked with pharmaceuticals and even supplements and all this other stuff that we need to build the energy back up.
Mm. Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to keep talking. We could talk an hour about just energy and like what that really means and what's happening there. I think I will leave that though. I would say final piece is just reclaiming sovereignty in ourselves. What would you recommend for someone to just start? What would be that first thing?
Go hug a tree.
I love it. Yes.
Now it's spring, grass is
Mhm.
starting to turn green, well, at least here in Colorado. Walk barefoot in the grass, get grounded. If you're curious about anything holistic, Google, interview the person, or go in and see what you think and try
Yeah.
something new.
That's a great, like, just get back to the roots, literally. Literally go back to the roots and of the plants. I think there's so much wisdom within nature that you can start to really glean information and that sovereignty within yourself when you watch how the animals and how nature really just does that.
Yeah, it's slowing down enough to be in the present moment, right? That's how we're going to get back to that sovereignty. The bees are starting to come out now. Bees are so essential to human life and the life of our planet and our plants and gardens and everything. So go look for a bee and watch how they collect the pollen on their feet, right? I mean, get down into the little bits and pieces of nature that can just keep you there in the present moment. And while you're sitting there, remember to breathe. Take some deep breaths.
Those are great reminders. Yes, it's very simple. I think our world, as amazing as it is with all their technology and the innovation, we need to remember those simple things of just where we really fit in this fabric of life and that breath and that just connection and that presence that does so much for our systems. Even you just saying all that, I could feel myself start to settle in and ground a little bit more. So that was really beautiful. So as we move to wild heart questions, my first one is, how do you personally live wildly? Which is what makes you come alive and makes like your unique expression.
Learning new things, stepping outside of my comfort zone and doing something different, being able to be as true and authentic as I can, and, putting myself out there. Saying really well, I'd love to travel. So going new places, doing new things.
That ignites your spark. And who or what inspires you right now?
I would have to say my daughters give me the most inspiration. They have turned out to be pretty incredible human beings, that they've touched a lot of lives, and I'm very proud of them. And then all the clients that walk in my door, I mean, they are inspiration as well. The one that they come in and they're willing to do the work, and they do the work, and that's pretty inspiring.
That's beautiful. It really is. Both of those are so inspiring. And I think it's a reflection, though, of you stepping into your authenticity and your truth and your power, that you got to hold those containers and raise your children and also support your clients to do that. So I think that's a huge kudos to you as well.
Thanks.
Yes. And what is an intention of yours in 2024?
Oh boy. I think to continue to expand and grow and learn. Life is this journey. There was a lot of stuff that went on last year, and so I think my word of the year started out as motivation. There was some flow disruption stuff, aging parents and some different things last year, and so stepping back into that flow and staying motivated.
Yes, those are lovely words. Those are really important. Okay. Well, Dr. Christie, why don't you tell us about where people can find you and look you up?
My company is Positively Whole Health, and you can find me at positivelywholehealth.com, or I'm also on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I will link all of her information on the show notes as well. And I highly recommend her if you're local in Colorado. You can find her and go see and get some help and find your wholeness. So, Christy, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and to have this conversation with me. It's been such a delight.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me on Live Wildly. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an empowering story, insightful lesson, or transformative tip. Together, we can continue to challenge the status quo, enhance our intuition, and uncover what makes us come alive. To dive deeper into our community of changemakers and access exclusive content, head over to my Substack, Trust and Pixie Dust, and subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram at WildlyOlivia for inspiration and updates. Remember, we are the changemakers in this world. Keep shining your light and living wildly. Until next time, I'm Olivia Ashley, and I can't wait to connect with you again.